One. Okay, hey guys, welcome to Happy Hour with Raj. I've got an extra special, awesome guest today, as usual. Every week we've got an awesome guest, but we've got an especially awesome guest because he's coming all the way from Northern Europe, and this is my friend Rasmus Faber. Rasmus, how you doing, buddy?
Hey man, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Good to see you. It's been a while. It's been like
It
I
has
actually
been a
haven't.
while.
I haven't. I don't think I've ever seen you face to face, even virtually, in what, like 11 years? 11 years.
Yeah, it's gotta be that. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, and so I wanted to start the show off first of all with talk about how we met because we have an interesting story, right? That starts the whole thing and it's going to set the tone for the whole interview and the whole show. So,
Yeah,
in your,
definitely.
from your perspective, how did we first meet?
Uh so my memory is notoriously bad,
Okay,
sort of remembering events. I,
yeah,
I remember like phone numbers and stuff, but
okay,
but events but I do know that we met
mhm,
most sort of intensely, if you want to say that, in the studio apartment show the band Studio Apartment had a gig at a venue in Tokyo called Ageha,
right,
where you and I performed because I think we had both featured on their album, perhaps.
right, right.
Uh, and there was a concert, and I performed with a singer who I think was also from San Francisco, if I'm not mistaken. I
Really?
could be mistaken. Actually, no, she might have been from somewhere else in the US. Actually, anyway, a singer named Krista, whom I written a song together with for Studio Apartment. So we
Okay.
performed that song, and I think I did a bit of DJing maybe, and then you sang like two, three songs or something.
Yeah, couple. I actually I had a number one iTunes hit with Studio Apartment in Japan just about a month before that show. With
Mm,
a song that we co-wrote together. Um, it was based on a kind of a like a an anime song that I did years ago with Yoko Kano. You know Yoko. We'll get to that.
hmm.
And then they loved that song from Wolf's Rain, and they said, "Why don't you write a song with us?" So we did this song called Strawberry Rainbow, which did pretty at the time good. It was I think hit number one on the iTunes dance charts in Japan for a few weeks, and they were really happy. And they introduced me to the other people that were on the album because it was kind of like an album with a whole bunch of different singers, right, and performers.
Right.
The apartment, as they always do, their house music, basically a house pop. What would you call them? You'd call them
I would
indie
say,
pop?
yeah, I would say they when you like right around that time they were sort of doing the pop thing a little bit, but I would say been pretty. They used to be, and I think they also later returned to a more kind of like just straight up house music,
Right.
not quite underground, but like kind of like club oriented
Right.
stuff. And one of the guys is a great musician, and the other one is obviously a DJ. The guy with sunglasses, really good DJ. So yeah, it's
That's actually half the population of Japan.
Morita-san is the DJ guy, and he's sort of been around the Japanese house scene forever.
Right, right. Okay. And so, I mean, that's how we met basically for that studio apartment gig at Ageha.
Yeah.
For those who've never been to Ageha, can you kind of tell them a little bit about what is Ageha? Because I know a lot of people that watch the show are really interested in music in Japan and getting involved with it. So, how would you describe Ageha to people?
Right.
The music.
Yeah, I guess just one really big club venue. I think I'm not sure. I'm trying to find if there's like an equivalent fabric in London, maybe.
Yeah,
But like,
fabric,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a big venue with like lots of stages, one sort of big main stage and a couple of outdoor spaces and some side rooms and stuff. But it's a really cool place, really cool
Right.
venue, and they've worked a lot on the sound. So the sound is quite it's quite famous. I think. I mean, some people just recognize pictures from that room just because the sound is so crazy. They have these like amazing massive red speakers hanging all around the ceiling and the main stage. Is quite a it's quite an imposing
Yeah.
scenery.
I mean, for both of us, I mean, I lived in Japan for when I met you, I was living in Japan at the time. So,
Hmm.
and I'd been there for already. I was there. That was my 18th year in Japan when I met
All
you.
right.
I've been there for a long, long time in Japan, basically living in Japan for like more than half my life at that
All
time.
right. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so when I went to play shows, I'd always play shows with other Japanese musicians and very few foreigners, and so that was fun for me because I got to meet other people from other countries and foreigners coming in and playing at Age. I'd played a few times before, but it was always with all Japanese bands, and I was like the only
Right.
only non-Japanese person there. And so I got used to the whole, the scenario in Japan, the whole like how when you do a live show, it's a serious thing, right? It's not like
Hmm.
it's nothing um, casual. It's very serious. Everyone takes it seriously.
Right. Right.
It's a big deal, and then meeting other great musicians like you and everybody else that was there for that show was very, eye opening because I've never been involved with an act like Studio Apartment, a house music act that actually worked with international musicians, right? Artists, musicians,
Yeah.
producers, right? So, um,
Yeah. I
so
think they were. I mean, they were among the first. I mean, it sort of started. Yeah. There was an increasing amount of that. I mean, now obviously, I mean, it's been so far. Now everything is sort of very globalized, like just all over the, you know,
yeah,
all over the world, I guess, but including Japan. But then, yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I started doing shows there around so 2005, 2006.
right, yeah,
And I never lived there. I just went there for touring.
right,
But sort of between sort of, yeah, I don't know, maybe 2005 and 2012, maybe
hmm,
there was a real boom in that sort of international kind of, yeah, the kind of like just exchange.
right.
Um, but I didn't know that you actually lived there. I sort of found out about who you were and what you worked on like after we did the gig. So when we did the gig, I just sort of, like I kind of just thought that you were a singer who happened to work with them. I didn't know the connection with sort of the anime scene and
Right.
that. And I wasn't really in that scene either at that time. I
Right.
sort of entered that scene like maybe a year or two after.
Right. Yeah, it's really it's actually a small world, right? When you think about it, like somehow everybody gets connected, and everybody has similar influences and tastes, and we all kind of connect world globally. It's been very interesting, and I think you're right. At that time, there was a lot of collaborations going on. It's somewhat different now. It's become more, um, you know, um, Japanese centric. There's not as many foreigners going there and performing the past due to COVID and whatnot in the past 5-6 years.
Yeah,
At that time, it was very hot, right, for
yeah.
collaborations and things like that. So how did you tell everybody how you? I mean, I was there. I was living there. I was working as a session singer and a songwriter with a lot of different artists. So I've been working with dozens of different Japanese artists. So I was already there in the scene and working with several people, including Yoko Kano, who and lots of different people. Which is strange. That we'll get to that later because we had that connection in as well, right? But how did you connect with Studio Apartment? Tell people where you're located right now. You're in Northern Europe, right?
I'm in Stockholm, Sweden.
In Sweden, right? And
Yeah.
so, how did you from Sweden get involved with Studio Apartment? Let's start with that.
Right. So that's kind of yeah. So I started like back in 2003 around there to produce house music
Mm,
here and so sort of getting involved in the club scene. And then I started making records basically. I wasn't a DJ at that time. I was just doing I'm a pianist, so I was just doing that. I was kind of a session musician, just starting out doing gigs. Like I was in my early 20s. Um uh so I made a couple of records that sort of made some waves in the club scene.
mm-hmm,
um and then yeah, I had a couple of I've worked with a British label called Defected,
mm-hmm,
and they helped me to sort of set up my own label, and I was doing the sort of that, yeah, the house music kind of club scene thing uh in Europe for like a year or so. And then um I can't remember exactly when it was. It must have been, yeah, either 2004, 2005. I just got a mail from the guy who would later become like my long-term manager and collaborator.
Mhm.
Um, uh, he, a guy named Hiro who was then A&Ring at a label called JVC in
Yeah.
Japan. And there was one of my records, a song called Ever After, that had sort of blown up in the Japanese club world. And this was before social media. So there was really no way of, I mean, that was kind of like he told me, and that was the surprise to me, because there was no real way of
Yeah.
knowing that. Like vinyl would sell, wherever it's sold, but then, you didn't really know where, like, I mean, it's hard to, yeah, it was hard to tell basically. So that came as a surprise to me. But during that year, that song had become really big on the Japanese club scene. So he sort of asked me, like, who am I and why, what I'm up to,
Yeah.
and stuff. So that ended up in an album project, sort of compiling what I've done up to that point, and some remixes and stuff that became a sort of another thing that's kind of not a thing anymore, but it was at that time, which was the sort of the Japanese exclusive CD.
Okay.
So you'd have artists releasing like albums specifically for Japan, or sort of produced only for Japan with like specific artwork and stuff. Um, so I did that, and it did really well. So that's kind of kicked me into the Japanese club scene, and then I started going there for gigs. And then for a couple of years, I'd say most intensive was probably sort of 2006, 7, 8, 9, maybe, where I probably went there touring sort of maybe 2-3 months out of every year, sort of divided up into, I don't
Yeah.
know, lots of trips. So
Wow.
I would stay maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 weeks at a time.
Mhm.
And then do tours. And then it was an interesting time, because it was not only like Tokyo and Osaka and the big cities that had nightclubs that played house music, but there's actually like a lot of really small cities
Yeah.
had like one one little house club. And it was
Yeah.
so, I mean, that was so cool to do those gigs, to go to like, like
Well, yeah.
Matsuyama, or like some small town, like
Yeah.
and there was like just this little clique of like 100 people in a small club with like a big sound system in some basement. Like, it was really, really interesting. And obviously, like, just from a travel perspective, that was really uh, amazing as well. I mean, the to just sort of be thrown into the Japanese countryside and be, yeah, kind of treated as a guest there. I mean,
Yeah.
that's quite an experience. But then, yeah, I mean, and during those times, there's always gigs where you share stage with different people, and then I basically met all the other people in the sort of all the other Japanese house music people.
Mhm.
And including Studio Apartments. And yeah, I don't know exactly how, I can't remember precisely how the collaboration came about, but I think I had actually at that time I had worked with them, because now we're in, you said it was 2011, right?
I think we met because I was just on my way out of Japan. I live here in California now, but I was just on my way. I'd literally just gotten rid of my apartment in Tokyo and I was in transition. And I'd stayed because of these gigs with Studio Apartment. And I had a bunch of other gigs lined up. So I was just there and my wife was just about to have a baby. So I was just like, I was like, okay, I'm going to finish these gigs. I'm going to, moving to California. So
Mm.
yeah, 2010, 2000, beginning of 2011, right? And I flew out the day of the big earthquake, actually, just after that gig.
Oh, really? Oh, did you?
I flew out that day. So I left in March of 2011 because it was stamped to my passport.
All right.
I left that day, and yeah, I go back regularly. for the first few years I was going back to do gigs, but now I'm pretty much here all the time, and you know, it's it's been a nice change. I mean, for me, living there is different than from going to visit there and doing gigs. I was there for so long inside of that scene, but now I find it interesting again. Right? It's kind of
Right.
renewed interest in that situation. And so,
Yeah.
are you still keeping in touch with people? Are you doing anything? I know you've scored some anime, so maybe we could talk about that a little bit too, because you're definitely
Yeah. Yeah. I was just gonna say, you reminded me that, of the earthquake. I was like, you flew out. I flew in. I was one of the first people to fly in. They canceled flights, like, the sort of the immediate, like the day after and the
yeah
2 days after. And then there's a lot of, there was a lot of sort of insecurity. And
yeah
I think people were a little bit overly worried,
yeah
about, like, going to Tokyo, whatever, like that kind of thing. So there was a lot of shows canceled,
hmm
and I had a gig booked, I think the day after the earthquake, but I
oh,
couldn't go, so because the flight was canceled. So I
right
was actually, yeah, they had a lot of cancellations, especially from Europe. I think a lot of German artists was just like, uh, really, like, there was a lot of sort of nuclear scare,
yeah oh totally totally
and I kind of like, yeah, I sort of didn't really buy it to that extent. So I was one of the first artists to come in and do a show after. So that
wow
was actually one of the most amazing shows that in Agaha as well, actually,
oh, okay
where it's kind of like the first weekend that they felt that it was like appropriate to go out and have a good time again. I think it was like a week after or something like that.
yeah
So it's
yeah
really amazing. It was kind of like, I got you know the opportunity to kind of partake in some kind of, a little bit of sort of coming back to the,
hmm
I don't know, coming back to the spirits type of
yeah
sort of event. It was really, yeah, it was really special.
um are you like, I mean, since then, have you been going back to Japan and DJing? I know there's two different things you do. You work as a composer, it's just so everybody knows, as a composer.
Right.
Well, actually three: producer, composer, and pianist. Correct? As a session pianist is what for different.
Uh, that
How would
that's
you?
true. I mean, the,
Yeah.
the the pianist thing I do mostly for my own productions, my own bands. So I don't consider myself like as a session musician in
Okay.
in that sense. I'm not. I lost my chops a little bit too much. I don't
Okay.
practice enough, but it's good for myself. But
Okay.
for my own composing and stuff. But yeah, yeah, I mean, the main reason I've been going back, because DJing sort of waned a little bit when I kind of didn't. Uh, I guess I did, but I didn't. I mean, I didn't really jump on the sort of EDM festival, that kind of
Yeah.
bandwagon. So when a lot of the DJing sort of turned into that, I didn't really follow along with that. So the DJing thing became much less intense sort of after 2012, 2013, I'd say.
Yeah.
Also because sort of my interest in the house. I mean, it's pretty much it's kind of like something that you kind of have to have a constant flow of house music releases in order to sort of have that going with the
Right.
DJing, because it's like clubs tend to book uh, DJs that sort of have um, things sort of on a regular basis going on, especially when it comes to kind of music releasing DJs basically. So I didn't do DJing that much. I mean, it was the occasional DJ gig, like every once in a year or something. But then I had also started this jazz band back in 2010, which was, I have this jazz group called Platina Jazz, which
Yeah.
I produce and mix, and we go there for gigs like about once or twice a year.
At Billboard Live.
And I've also gone there with my other live band, but I have my own live band called Rafa Orchestra, where we play basically my original material. So it's sort of went over into that a little bit more. I started going, I think it was, yeah, around 2010. I started going more with sort of big groups of musicians from Sweden, and all flying over there and playing gigs at this live venue, Billboard Live.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Mm.
I know Billboard Live really well. I was just mentioning that in Shibuya, right? In right in
It's
Santagaya.
in no, it's in Midtown.
Really? I
Um,
think Billboard Live was it in Santagaya in Shibuya, like right there with
no,
the
it's not. It's in the the Midtown Mall.
yeah,
The
yeah,
it's that's it's right in there.
in Midtown Mall. Really? Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. What? Okay, I don't know because I remember a long time ago there was a Billboard right, where the guitar store was. They right in Shibuya down and right in the Santagaya area. There was a Billboard Live venue, and there was a guitar store down there as well, and
Hmm.
little shops and restaurants and those little streets down there. But it moved to
Mm.
Midtown. Okay, well that's interesting. And so you played there a couple of times in Midtown, right?
Yeah.
Okay, with a full band situation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so we got invited like yeah, we before COVID we played like yeah, once or twice a year, I'd say.
Wow.
Uh and I
Okay.
was sort of alternating between this jazz band and this other sort of my original band. But then later on, I think the jazz band kind of that really grew
Mhm.
audience wise and stuff. So then that sort of became the main thing. Plus with the which we'll get to the anime scoring thing. I mean that became a also a reason to go for like yeah the occasional meeting and stuff.
Right. Right. Uh-oh. We've lost him.
Now I'm back. Here we go.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I mean, you've had such a like I mean, like a lot of people, a lot of musicians, we have this kind of weird existential relationship with Japan in a way, it's like it's sort of there and it's interesting. I mean, your relationship with Japan has continued over the years and it's been like the relationship with JVC Victor, right? Releasing albums with them and touring over there.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And then and
Yeah. There's been changes for sure, but like yeah,
yeah.
but more or less yeah.
Mhm. And so, let's talk about the anime scoring, which is something that I know a lot of viewers really love. They love your work, and so maybe we could talk about what you've done in the past, and then what you're potentially up to, right now.
Yeah, for sure, for
And
sure, definitely. I'm just gonna move walk around here a little bit and do a little detour into just getting some power from my phone so I don't that was the reason I went black there for a second, just one of those sort of yeah
can we have a
battery
look can we look at your
warning
can
thing.
we look at your studio at all? Is that
Yeah,
possible?
sure,
Yeah,
sure,
it's
sure.
okay. Yeah.
We go.
Sweet.
Here's the Bechstein Grand,
Nice.
the marimba,
Marimba. Okay.
all the
Yeah.
stuff. Um and we found roads there and
Yeah. You have stacks of keyboards.
stacks of keyboards, uh, and the sort of yeah, the
Nice.
main
Great.
control unit,
Fantastic.
and the big boy working away in the corner.
There you go. There you go. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're all studio heads. I'm here in my studio right now. I just live here basically. I'm here all the time. It's
Oh
ridiculous.
yeah,
Yeah. It's
but you have kids now. You said
well, yeah, I've got three kids now,
okay.
and but
Awesome. How old are they?
I've got a 5-year-old, a 9 and 11-year-old. So they're all
Okay,
yeah. How
cool.
about you, Rasmus? Do you have any kids?
Two.
You've got two kids. Oh wow, I didn't even know
Yeah,
that. Okay, all right.
yeah.
How old are they?
They're 3 and 6.
Oh my God, dude, you're in trouble.
So I'm more in the middle of that, that phase.
You're in a good place, man. They're so cute when they're that age. It's like, oh, they're so cute. It's like, now my kids, they're getting to the age where they're going like, hey, Dad, we don't need you so much anymore, and so
Yeah,
you
yeah.
go through withdrawal. You go through withdrawal, you're like, oh my God, you
So,
want them around all the time. And, and then you're tired of them. And then suddenly they're gone. You're like, oh my God, I can't be without them. You're not sure what to do without them suddenly, and that's great, man.
yeah, I gotta remember that.
Yeah, no, enjoy them now, brother. I'm telling you, because they get a little bit older, and they just like they're gone. They're out with friends by the time they're 10, 11, out with friends, and they start living their own lives, and they're independent thinkers.
Yeah,
Very different. So that's great, man. And so, if you don't mind, since we're on the topic about your studio, tell us about your studio in Stockholm. What kind of stuff you guys are doing, and before we move on.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, this is like it's actually, for me, it's a really ideal place because it's
Yeah.
kind of like, I mean, it's really small. Well, it's not really small. It depends on what you compare it with, but it's like, God, oh, we're into like aerial, well, dimensions. It's 40 square meters. I don't know if that
Okay.
tells you anything, but like,
I'm
uh,
Canadian, so I'm okay with metric.
oh, yeah, there you go, there you go. All right. So, uh, so, uh, so it's like perfect for me. I mean, I got my grand piano here. The mic's all set up. I got the, all the sort of lots of live instruments and really nice acoustics. So I can really, it's like the perfect place for a soul producer.
Right.
That still allows me to like record, bits of a larger stuff. So I really only go into like larger studios when I record like string orchestras and that kind of stuff.
Right.
So I can have like, I can have like 2-3 people in here. And then, yeah, and basically it's a really kind of like, it's just my sanctuary. Like that's my place for like complete focus. I don't share the space with anyone. I'm just like when I go in here, it's like, it's like full on Zen, and then, sort of just grinding away at the music production stuff.
Wow. I know.
And I just do everything in here. I just do scoring and house music and, whatever, like all kinds of stuff. I do a lot of different things, and yeah.
Good for you, man. I mean, that's kind of like, I mean, my studio here is similar to that, mostly for my projects, but we have other people come in, people, because we're in the Bay Area, so people come up from LA and people fly in from Tokyo. Sometimes they'll lock out the studio for a week, and then we'll do production with them, or they'll just come for the weekend or something. But most of the time, it's our own production here at the studio. And so I love to be here alone as much as possible to work, to get focused on things. So
Mm,
I just kind of come here, as much as possible to be on my own,
yeah,
like you, to get deep into what's going on and do things. And it's a luxury, right? I mean, in Japan, it was like there's no way
that
to
is.
there's no way to do anything like that. But
Yeah.
I guess California and Europe, there you can do those things. You can have your own studio, and so you have people come in and work with you on projects, so obviously different things.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, I don't do that much in terms of like kind of collaborative sessions and that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
I don't do the songwriting thing that much. When I work with songwriters, I tend to prefer to actually work remotely. Um, so that's just a personal preference. I don't like to co-write in a room.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
so that's what I mean. Sweden is sort of, no, I don't know how well known that is, but Sweden is like on a per capita level, Sweden is like
Unbelievable.
crazy big on music output.
Yeah, I know it's crazy.
So it's like every other, and Stockholm is the epicenter of that. So it's like,
Yeah.
I feel like songwriter is like a real common job here.
Yeah. No, it's true.
um,
I tell my friends and students, they don't believe me. I said like that Sweden is just unbelievable. That's the epicenter of songwriting for LA. I'm sorry to cut
yeah,
you off. Yeah.
yeah. So like I have a lot of people do that, and they go on these writing camps, and they have sessions, and they go, they have people go, like they go around different, like every day different studio and that kind of thing. And the people who have their own studios, they have different people in every day and stuff. But I don't, I mean, I actually, I'm quite sympathetic to that way of working, just on a sort of, just on paper. I mean, I think it sounds like it's social. It's kind of like it's sort of vibey and creative, and you meet new people and vibe off each other. But somehow it just doesn't work with me. I think it's the speed of it that doesn't, like, I'm super efficient, but I'm not. I, I need to like think and evaluate stuff. And sometimes when you're in there with someone else,
Yeah.
you just don't go like, oh, like, let's, let's roll back on this verse that you just said that you wrote that you were really happy with. Like, let's, because you don't want to create negative energy. So you kind of just sort of like go with the flow. So
Yeah.
what tends to happen is that you end up with a lot of songs that are just not that good because you couldn't really roll back on decisions because of sort of like the social interactions. And then instead of perfecting every song, you kind of like chose one out of 4 songs that are kind of like the best ones, and then you sort of leave the like that kind of thing. And I just it doesn't work for me.
Yeah, there's anxiety too, right? You get together with people and you don't know them maybe, or you do know them, and there's still anxiety.
Yeah, there's a little of that for sure. But so what I tend to do when it comes to songwriting is just like I like to kind of do it remotely until it's like almost finished, and then you can meet up, just do the final tweaks, and then do the vocal recording, like if it's the top liner and the singer or something, then just so you sort of like you do all the difficult conversations via email. Like I don't like that word and like all that stuff. And then once that's done, it's like you meet, and then it's just like, hey man, yo, you know.
No, I totally understand. I totally get that. That totally makes
so
sense.
then you do then you do like the final tweaks. So maybe we go to like that little note there in the end, and then it's like, boom, and then you record, and it's like, that's kind of works better for me. But I have a lot of session musicians coming in here. Like I'd have like bass players and guitar players and percussionists and stuff coming around and putting their stuff on. Yeah, lots of stuff. So that's probably the most of the people that come in here are musicians.
So tell us about the bulk of what you do. Is it composing for to visual media? Is it producing artists? Is it your own work? Like what is the bulk of what you do, baby? I think a lot of people are
That's
curious.
always, I mean, I would say bulk is a good word, because I feel like more and more, and that's actually, it sounds like a bad word combined with music, but for me it's actually not. I think scoring, I started scoring maybe like say 5-6 years ago.
Yeah.
And that sort of made me really, I got really into the sort of, the kind of idea of producing large volumes of music and actually enjoying that.
Yeah.
Because I think it was so different from what I came from, because I've been I do the house music thing, which is my own artist career, which is also a little bit, I do other types of music for myself as well, but basically that kind of thing. I write some songs and produce them and that stuff. And then my anime side actually started with opening themes. So I've written a lot of opening and ending themes. So for anime, so which is like, I mean, I guess everyone listening to this will know what the opening theme of an anime is. But but basically, what you hear in the anime is the 90-second version of the opening or ending theme. But there's always a full song. So I got into the anime world via being more of a pop producer, being asked to do opening themes featuring Japanese singers. So I did that for a couple of years before I was asked to actually do some scoring, some full scoring. And then so I did, and those projects are just every song is like, well, at least for me, is very, it's like each song is almost like a score in itself. It takes a couple of weeks to produce probably just one song. There's so many details and different parts, and there's so much stuff going on. And I just really like scoring and sort of like producing large volumes of music where each minute is sort of not as precious. It's more about the overarching picture. I like to do that as a bit of a contrast to that sort of extremely detailed way of working, which can be, it can be so tiring to, in a different way. I mean, now I have a score here that I'm working right now, which is like, I have 50 songs in one big Logic project. So it's a completely different way of approaching,
What do you mean 50 songs in one Logic project? I mean, you've got the actual, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, literally 50 songs in one Logic project.
Wow. Okay, so they're part of a score, or are they cues or
They're
actual
yeah,
songs?
they're just basically the full score in one Logic project.
Wow. Wow. Okay. I mean, yeah. I work on a ton of projects that are super deep too, and but 50 is pretty hefty. That's a
Yeah,
huge
I mean,
tune.
I bought a new computer just recently, which allowed me to do it. I probably wouldn't have been able to with my old computer. Oh no,
There
I
you
for
go.
sure wouldn't have been able to.
Yeah. 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 That's yeah. We do the same thing. We just update all the computers. It's yeah. It's definitely an important part of what we do. Um,
Oh yeah, for sure.
And so I guess you're producing. I mean, I know that you're like me. You do a lot of different things. You're constantly like scoring and producing and writing and performing and playing and touring and stuff like that. But how would you, if you were to like describe yourself to somebody who doesn't know your work, because there's going to be a lot of people who don't know you, and how would you present yourself to them, and like how would you say who's Rasmus Faber, basically, to other people who don't know you? How do I explain it to them?
Well, I guess house music artist turned anime score producer or composer or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
but I mean that
yeah,
sort of is ambiguous enough to sort of
yeah.
ask some further follow-up questions, like how
Right.
does that work?
Oh my God, we're so similar, man.
Um,
We're so similar. I have the same problem. I don't describe myself. I'm always trying like, how do I describe? Because I'm always trying to,
mm,
help people. Like, what is it like? Frame people. So, I mean, what would you say is your main strength? Man, put it that way.
I think I think I have a certain um, I have a certain harmonic and melodic, uh, I would say taste, but
Yeah.
taste turned into skill,
Okay.
because I sort of like I own I sort of developed this. I developed my taste for sort of harmonies and melodies into some sort of skill, which I pretty much always tap into whichever genre I do. I mean, it's or whichever song or project I do. I mean, of course, it's less apparent sometimes and more sometimes, but there is when there are occasions when someone will say, "Oh, this is a Rasmus Faber song,"
Mhm.
and this what they always refer to then is typically chords or a certain type of melody in combination with some chords. So
Mhm.
it's not typically like a certain type of rhythm or a certain type of production style, but it's like it centers around harmonic content. So
Interesting.
I guess I would say that's kind of my, I don't know if I should say that that's my strength necessarily, because I guess maybe it's not as maybe it's maybe it's the opposite. Who knows?
Mhm.
But it's like that. I tap into that, and I tap into uh, an efficiency that I've developed also over the years.
In terms of
And
production.
those two things, I think, combined are sort of like what I those are sort of my secret weapons, and everything else is kind of like I'm sort of in the dark as everyone else.
So let just to clarify, so it's your melodic sense you feel your strong points, and combined with production, efficiency and production.
Mm.
Is that how you feel about it? Like,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. Those are the things that sort of like never goes away. I mean, otherwise, I mean, I've gone from I've gone back and forth between focusing more on sort of acoustic elements and kind of live elements in productions to going more electronic to, fully in the computer, analog synths, mixing on a large desk, blah, 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 all of that, recording lots of instruments to, all I sort of like oscillated between those.
yeah.
So I can't really say that, like, some producer might say like, oh yeah, but he's on the, you might say about some guy that's like, yeah, he's on the forefront of like electronic music production, blah blah blah. Like that's not, I'm not that, like I'm sort of traversing the years, sort of without it's kind of like I'm not regarding styles so much, and not I'm interested in new production techniques and stuff, but these days I tend to work with like young guys, you know, for who kind of like who are living, you know, who are living the new sounds, and
Yeah.
you know, and then I sort of like I just go like, you know, well, let's just record some live marimba on top of that. That'll be, you know, like
My contribution.
yeah, exactly. But
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you're bringing I mean, like you, I come from a musician's background. I'm a guitar player
Hmm.
and a singer, right? So, you know, our training and our musical sense is based on the sort of traditional musical styles, and you know, understanding, you know, understanding the 12 tones and what you could do with them, and you know, like getting lessons and
Hmm.
learning how to develop our technique. And but nowadays I see so many artists that don't have any musical training, and yeah,
Right.
they're great, you know, they're great, and or they're very
Yeah, yeah.
rudimentary skills, and you know, they can't read music, and which is not necessary, but it's still nice to be able to throw up a piece of music in front of people and say, can you read this, and let's work on something. And that's totally fine, I understand that, you know. But how do you, like, what do you think of all this? Like, what would you say to people who are trying to get into music now? A lot of young people are going to look up to you, and they're going to look up to producers who've done things. And like, how would you say to them that they need to learn their piano chops, and they need to understand music
No,
theory?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that. I mean, there's so much to learn, and there's so many hours of that. What I usually tell people, because I work, I sort of I kind of take on a little bit of a mentor role for a lot of young guys that I also work with. So I work with people all across the age span, but I work a lot of people with a lot of people in their early 20s.
Right.
And I work with some of them who are like amazing producers that can't play or read music,
Right.
that are still great. And
Yeah.
I work with people who took more the sort of like the classic routes, who are like, you know, whatever, it's great guitar players or something that can do all the stuff that, you know, who's sort of like, you could swap him for someone educated in the 80s and it would be pretty much the same skill set, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I just, to me it's just the main, I would just say that so many people are, I mean, it's just so much competing for attention. Like it's really difficult for people to have music production, or let alone practicing an instrument, being the most exciting thing that you can think about doing with your day,
Right.
especially in front of a computer. So like
Yeah.
a lot of these a lot of the young guys that I sort of um I sort of mentor a little bit. I just try to teach them about self-discipline and stuff like that. I mean, just basically putting in the hours.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care if all you do is like chopping samples in Ableton and you can't read music or understand, you don't even know where the C is on a keyboard. As
Yeah.
long as you put in the hours and you have some talent, it's going to turn into something. But you just got to turn in those hours and, you know, challenge yourself and all that. So
Mhm.
I'm quite happy that there there are people who choose to spend their 10,000 hours uh, on things that I would never spend it on. Like, so you have someone who's just like, you know, it's like kind of like it's who's so into sound design that is sort of bordering on programming.
Right.
You know, that's definitely not my, I mean, that's not, I don't know, like I can't even begin to see, like I don't know anything about that, but I'm very grateful that there are people traversing the
Mhm.
space between taking just one note and then turning it into some granular stuff and then writing their own scripts of how that's gonna blah blah blah, you know, that kind of stuff. I'm super grateful that there are all types of, you know, and obviously I'm super grateful that like just the other day, like 2 days ago, I was in a big studio with recording a string orchestra for this score.
Mhm.
And I'm obviously very grateful that those guys are just there, you know, sight reading the shit out of
Yeah.
my scores, you know, and playing
Yeah.
stuff in the most sort of timeless and sort of true to the, you know, whatever, way.
Are you conducting
So,
as
you know,
well? You're conducting as well?
no, I'm not conducting. I've I've made a, I guess, a semi-active choice to not do that, because
I'm
in
scared
order to
silly of
keep the
that. I'm scared.
sessions,
Sorry,
yeah, I
guys.
mean, in order to keep the sessions efficient,
Yeah.
I need to be in the control room and really listening, just listening to what
Yeah.
happens in context and of the production. So I've I'm I'm able to say, you know, we got it, like this, that was a take, you know,
Yeah.
let's move on, and that kind of thing. And I have another guy who is also sort of like the
Mhm.
guy who's, you know, sorting out all the sheet music and la da da. He was doing the actual conducting, so that works better for me.
Okay. All right. And so, I mean, right now, like, again, the bulk of what you do is scoring or production, or if people came to you and said, "I want to work with Rasmus Faber," um, what would you? I mean, what do you? Who are you looking to work with right now? You want to work with songwriters? You want to work with visual media? I'd love to
I
know.
mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, I think I do a lot of these different things. At the moment, I think scoring is kind of my focus, not necessarily in time, in terms of time, but in terms of goals.
Right.
So I really enjoy scoring. So I can only hope, but you know, it's like, but it's also like it's pretty competitive
Yeah.
field, right? I mean,
Sure.
it's like, you know, I'm I'm lucky that I even have some scoring gigs.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so so uh, so that's, I mean, yeah, I mean, but I really want to do that. So I'm gonna try to really ace this one, and you know,
Yeah.
hopefully that will lead to more things. And I really love anime scoring specifically as well, because I really love the musical sort of the breadth of expression
Yeah.
that you can use.
Right.
Um, so if you yeah, I mean, it's just such a variety of music in anime compared to, you know, like, let's say, like, I don't know, like let's take some like super cool and super enjoyable series on Netflix, like, or HBO, whatever, like some, you know, True Detective, say.
Yeah. I love True
I mean,
Detective.
it's like,
Love it.
yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
But and you know, like, obviously I wouldn't turn down the score gig for True
Yeah.
Detective, but just saying, just like zooming out a little bit, it's like, you know, it's like a lot of lonely, dissonant
Yeah.
drones, and it's not, I'm not sure it's like the most fun score gig in terms of, like, you know, expressing yourself fully, you know.
It's a depressing series, actually. It is.
Yeah,
That's
and I mean, a lot of series are like that if you think about it, and a lot of this of the series, in especially in the Western world, that are not depressing, tend to have what do you call that, licensed music. So basically, I mean, they just, yeah, they just take songs from whatever band or genre or era, or and just license it.
maybe,
Tends to be more
yeah. Maybe you could tell people a little bit about licensing. I think a lot of people probably they're interested in both of
right.
them.
Yeah, I
Both
mean, it's
here, so.
basically, I mean, I think I mean, obviously I'm generalizing, but
Mm.
typically if you look at an anime show and there's like a what's in anime scoring called a daily life scene, is just where, you know, people are just in the school or in the street or whatever,
Yeah.
and you have a little piece of music, or when there's kind of like a comedic, like, whatever, some kind of gag scene, blah blah blah, like some kind of, like, they're doing something that's supposed to be funny, that, like, there's a score element there.
Right.
um and you could say that's kind of similar to maybe a Disney movie, where
Yeah.
also obviously you have, like, typically you have a full score running through those scenes. But if you look at the typical series, like on Netflix or whatever, usually when you have, I don't know, I just saw that there was a new season out of Master of None, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
great series. But whenever, that's when when those scenes occur in those type of series, typically you would have something that's by some band, like by some artist, so that the movie production has some kind of idea of an aesthetic that goes along with the scene, and then that's tied to a typical artist, or like a typical sort of a genre, a band. That's they look for a song more in that sort of field.
Right.
I think it's a little bit also because it's like, I don't know. It's in a way, I think Western series tends to distance themselves a little bit from positive elements in their expression. You know what I mean?
Interesting. Okay.
So like there's always a meta. When if you have like a romantic series, sorry, a romantic scene, and you put like an actual romantic score on top of that, that makes it a little bit risky, because it's like you take it seriously. But if you put some Nat King Cole song on there, it's like you're or even better, you put some kind of like indie band or whatever. You kind of like you have a little bit of an ironic backdoor, so that you don't, if it's perceived to be like too
cliche,
I don't know, too cliche, you always have that, like, but I'm only painting the image of this romantic blah blah blah, like there, you know what I mean, like there's always this sort of meta. But anime is never like that. Anime is always like, it's
in your face,
bang on the emotion.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. I mean, you're right. I mean, they're always trying to. They're trying to, like, I guess they're trying to subvert the cliche in a lot of Hollywood too, right? And like subvert the cliche, and like, here's this song, this pop song in the middle of a serious score to break the tension. So we're not another regular kind of show. I was one of my a guy that I know, that Jeff Rousseau. I don't know if you're Jeff Rousseau. He's a well-known composer. He's doing a lot of like big science fiction shows, and
right.
I don't know if you're Jeff, but Jeff was in a rock band for many years called Tonic. Writing pop songs, and never went to music school, never did anything, and just a rock guitar player, transitioned into one of the biggest composers in Hollywood. And his thinking, because I've known him for a long time, his thinking is, it's just communication. It's just being able to understand the narrative and how to communicate the narrative. Take what the director is saying and put it out there for people so that they understand it in a way that they can digest, but it's not too obvious. Like a very subtle way of getting people to digest, follow the narrative and digest it. Almost like breadcrumbs that lead up to the cool part, right? And
right.
then, and he's actually really found that happy medium, and I feel like he's the anime world like hits you over the head with it, right? It's just like straight up, this is it, no apologies, that's it, right?
And I mean, I get, and as a consumer, I get it, and I get, like, I also don't want, because when you see something like, I don't know, I think it's partly cultural difference, but I think it's also partly an actual evolvement. Like, it's an actual it's an artifact of Hollywood having done it for so long, right, catering to so many audiences and learning. I mean, I think that when we if you look at some kind of, I don't know, like a Indian or Chinese or like some kind of drama, and you kind of watch a drama series, you're like, oh my God, they're like so over the top with the emotions, right? And you kind of become, as a viewer, you become self-conscious.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, totally.
Anime has an interesting thing, because anime by its nature is representational. like you're watching cartoons, but you're feeling real emotions. Like there is an abstract, like you're already abstracting. You're not like peeking down into some real life. It's already a representation. So I think that's why it sort of gets away with this high level of emotion. You wouldn't be able to pull that off it doesn't matter if it could be like romantic, funny, but also like sorrow and death, anxiety, and all that stuff. Emotions run really high, right? Yeah. And I think the fact that it's animated sort of makes you go into that sort of representational mode. I don't know if I would be able to watch that if it was like a live action, like a feature film, like a regular movie with actors. That would be like it'd probably be like, oh my god, like this is because they're painting the picture so clearly. It's like it doesn't give any. I mean, we need that sort of, maybe we as consumers need that backdoor as well, like with the, if I don't think too highly of this romantic entanglement that these two guys are having, I can always look at it as kind of like an ironic twist, as scored by this indie band song, whatever.
Okay.
But going back to composing this context, right? Like that's that's kind of like why it's more fun in a way to be able to compose with all those emotions.
Right.
So it's not like you hire the composer for the long depressing drones, but whenever some other type of emotion comes in, they license some song. Like you want to, as a composer, maybe you want to write that song too, right?
Yeah. No. Okay, I'm gonna hold you for just 10 seconds, and I want to ask you some questions about Demon Slayer because I went to the movie. Did you see the movie? Have you seen Demon Slayer?
No. Fill me in.
Have you seen the shows at all, Demon Slayer? No? Okay. Oh no. Okay, I can't ask you about this one because I want to get your opinion on this because the soundtrack totally messed me up. It messed with my head completely because it was like a video game soundtrack. It was just like character driven loops.
Demon Slayer is an anime originally? No?
I believe so. Give me 1 second. 1 second. I'm gonna be right back. 1 second. Let me just check. 1 second.
It's based on a manga.
An anime originally, yes.
An anime, okay. All right. So, but then they made it into a feature film in Hollywood?
Yes. I guess it's a Japanese feature. I don't know. I went to see it. My daughter is really into anime, right? And because she got interested because she heard me singing in Cowboy Bebop. She was like, "That's my dad," and I was like, "Okay." And now she got into like anime, and now she's a total anime nerd, and she loves it. And her favorite anime is Demon Slayer. So we went to see it, and I went to see the movie. I saw it in the movie theater here in California, and I was like, "This is like a video game. It's not like an anime. It's like almost these video game loops. It's like loops basically. The music were different, right? Hard rock electronica loops, right? Basically, it really wasn't a score. It was more like non-linear media composing,
right?
You know what I mean? Like just loops.
What's
your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, one thing that I can say to the defense of whoever made the score is that I found that it's actually easy. Like when you do pop music, a lot of the times you're using like you're pitching tracks. So like you maybe, okay, let's say artist X wants a new song.
Right.
They might be like picking a song out of 10 songs that they are presented with by some people that they've chosen. Right. And if they can't find the right song, they'll sort of continue the search.
Right.
But when you start a movie production, there might be ideas and there might be sort of like directors and there might be, there is a schedule that needs to be kept, and there are initial ideas and initial concepts that might be changed. it's quite easy, and I'm sure quite common, to sit
Mm.
there like 2 weeks before deadline
Yeah,
and going like, well, with whatever, with all the changes that's been going on now and all the new info that I have, like suddenly the director shows me like lots of pictures, and it's just like, well, this is nothing like what you sent me like a month ago when I started, that kind of stuff.
yeah,
You can actually be in the situation where you're like, wow, it's like actually what I have is not optimal, but you, there's just no solution.
yeah,
Just you do the best you can, salvage whatever you can, and try to turn it around to something workable. Like there's a lot of ways that it can sort of go wrong, but not wrong enough to just sort of like, oh, we're just gonna hold off on the movie premiere then because the music isn't ready. I mean, that's not gonna happen.
yeah,
So I can see, especially, I mean, obviously with like big budget Hollywood movies, they have ways around this. Like either, they have so high budgets and so long overheads that they can sort of really nail this. Like,
yeah,
uh, you know, but and they have time and they have visions. And but when it comes to, and I know especially with I don't know if this was a Japanese production, but I mean, if I'm working on scoring something in Sweden,
yeah,
I can just call the director, uh, and just like, hey, what do you think of this, right? But and I think I'm not only saying this as a Western guy working in Japan, but I think even for if you're a Japanese composer, it's not so easy if you're wondering about like a certain mood in a song or something that you just call the director up and ask. It's
no,
sometimes there's a lot of steps in between, and there's managers and there's procedures and la di da,
yeah,
right? So I think what well, that was a long-winded answer to just say like sometimes things just fail,
yeah,
and it's not necessarily that you know people were just like having bad taste all along, but it was actually like maybe the guy had written like five other great stuff, and these loops were just meant to complement them. And then the director said like, oh, now we feel we suddenly, now that we edit this, it just doesn't work anymore what you did with those things. We're just going to do these loops. And the
yeah.
composer would be like, fuck, people are going to hate me. And alas, you do. you know
Well, right, right. I mean, it's a tricky business. There's no way, there's no way. Every way you slice it, it's a tricky business.
yeah,
I
I
mean,
have sympathy for failures after working on it myself. That's what I can say.
it makes you more kind to others, right? You know, in
Oh
terms,
yeah, for
yeah,
sure, for
yeah,
sure. I mean,
yeah,
but I mean, if you talk to any composer scoring wherever in the world, I mean, they will tell you like there's so many things that can go wrong
yeah,
that will impact the music in a way that they're not happy with. And who at and on the flip side, a lot of composers who are happy with their score might be happy on a, yeah, how can I say, the score that we as musicians perceive to be the best score might not always be the sort of the most efficient score if you look at it from a commercial angle or something like that. So there's that too.
yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, even directors too. I mean, directors are tough to work with. My personal feeling is directors are all visually oriented, not audio oriented. So they don't often know what they want, right? And they put temp music in, they get if I have temp love,
Yeah,
and then you're screwed,
yeah,
because they fall in love with the temp track, and then that's it, for them. And they don't know anything. They don't know any different because we're
mm,
all audio oriented as music people. And everything's
yeah.
about the audio. When the visuals come second, I'll get up and I'll wander around the house in my underwear and nothing else, and I'm okay with it. But people go, "Oh, Dad, put some clothes on." I'm like, "Why?" I'm hearing, I'm listening to Bob Marley. It doesn't matter.
Thank you for sharing that night of visual
Nightmare.
imagination.
You'll have nightmares for a while.
Uh,
Yeah, that was.
oh, put some clothes on.
Put your clothes on, Dad, please. Yeah, yeah.
Right. I mean, so another thing that's kind of like because you're talking now about temp music with music scored for pictures and stuff, and I'm sure if this was a feature film, it was probably or most likely scored to the image. But anime and a lot of series are done in a different way, where you're actually providing the directors with a music library beforehand.
Correct. Yeah.
And that presents like, I mean, I can like the instructions I have for this score. That is, so this is a full season of a new series that's coming out. It's called Kyokai Senki, that I'm writing the score for. It's kind of like a mecha future anime thing. So so I know things about the aesthetics and the script and stuff, but the instructions on the songs themselves, it's literally you can fit it into one paper. Like so it's like track number 1, and it's like literally one sentence of description for that track. And so it's like, I mean, it's so like it's almost the opposite of scoring to picture. I mean, there are no cues, there are no time cues of like no time cues. There's nothing in the aesthetics. There's just very, very little info. So what you have to do is kind of like you create enough diversity whilst also keeping some kind of red line to like to make sure that the music editors have enough to work with. I think that's why a lot of anime music is perceived to be a bit sort of like, I mean, even in really serious sort of high budget anime, it's a bit like the music is a bit strange. But it's like you have scenes coming and they only have like, you have one emotion that is coming back all the time in the anime, but maybe they have only one piece of music to fit that. Exactly. So they have to just rehash that music over and over, and that might not have even been the best piece of music, but it's the one they have to fit that emotion. So it gives rise to a lot of like sort of weird situations in the anime, where it's just like, wow, had I known that it was going to look like this, I would have written 5 tracks to fit this, but only one to fit, but there's, you have this piece of paper that sort of tells you something much more vague. So
I think that they I mean, they're just asking for standard cues, almost like a game, right? Like cue loops that you could just sort of take and they can place, right?
No, well, not really, because they also want to be able to score with it. So it needs to have, where you have video game, you have like sort of infinite length stuff. So it's more like loopy things, right? But for the anime, they still have, a very finite length of each scene. So they want, I think ideally they want something that sounds scored, but that also it should sound like it's scored to picture oftentimes, but it should also be possible to sort of edit it into different lengths. So it's quite a,
it's like a library.
It's quite a challenge. So you got to have a lot of stops and starts and, like that kind of thing, so they can edit in the right places, and,
It's really interesting. And so this anime that you're working on right now, can you tell us anything about it or anything?
I mean, it's called Kyokai Senki, and I think it's kind of it is a movie, a series that will premiere, I forgot when it's premiering, sometime this fall. It's kind of set in the future, and Japan has been invaded by sort of international forces, and then it's about sort of a young guy, that kind of thing.
Okay, all right.
But it's like I don't know, in robot fights and future international conflicts, and probably some coming of age young guy grows up and takes responsibility on something like that.
Okay, great for kids. Yeah, fantastic.
Hey, hey, don't be don't be condescending. No, I don't think it's gonna be. I mean, it's not overly kidsy as I understand it. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's probably like sort of that's kind of common standard age of where, you know, sort of high school, college.
Yeah,
But you know,
yeah.
I'm sure kids will watch it, but I'm sure also 40-year-old anime fans will also watch it.
Hey,
You know?
hey,
So it's
I'll
like,
be there.
yeah.
I'll be there watching it. For sure, for sure. Okay, so tell us about your future plans. We know what you're doing right now. So we deal with the past, the present, and now the future. What's the future for Rasmus Faber? What's going on? What's happening with you? Are you traveling? Are you getting out of Sweden? I know that Sweden has been one of those countries that has had a very unusual sort of lockdown scenario. And then I don't know what's going on right now. There's so many. I mean, it's great you talked about the songwriters, because Sweden is the songwriter heaven, basically. You know,
Mhm.
there's so many songwriters. So do you feel you want to get out of Sweden and go places? What's your plan?
I mean, in terms of the COVID situation, it looks like we're sort of. I mean, we're sort of on track with the rest of Europe, uh, with the vaccination process, which is like a bit behind the US, but like not like crazy behind.
Okay.
So I'm guessing, you know, things. It's been said that things will open up a bit, and we've been able to travel like with restrictions and stuff. I mean, I can't wait to go back to Japan. Honestly, I think I've never missed Japan more than
Yeah.
now.
Yeah, me too,
Um,
actually.
and but I'm also a bit sort of like I'm also a bit sort of I don't know. I'm just worried when everyone is just gonna sort of like take back 2 years of lost traveling. It's just gonna be I don't know.
It'd be crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what's gonna happen. But anyway, I mean, I'm sort of like looking. I'm trying to sort of be a bit sort of zen about that and just see what happens. But
Do you go to Ibiza at all?
yeah,
I remember people that I met
I
people.
haven't been for I haven't been for many years actually. It's never been a place that I've been DJing uh because yeah, it's I've sort of not been. I don't know for whatever reason I haven't done gigs there. Um, so it's not somewhere I go, and especially well, I mean, I don't really know where things might open up for me now gig wise, because it's kind of like yeah, it's hard now to know. I mean, I might be more of an. I mean, it could be that I'm more of an online artist
Oh, really? Okay.
coming out of COVID. Yeah, because I haven't really like I haven't really pushed the DJing performance bit for a while,
Yeah.
and I'm also not sure if I'm gonna do that or not. Like I can't. I'm a bit undecided actually about whether that's you know, or do I just focus hardcore on the scoring thing and like try to do that and maybe you
Yeah.
know do some traveling on that end. You know, go to Budapest and record a symphony orchestra or whatever, like that kind of stuff. Like and not trying to push the DJ thing so much. I don't know actually.
Yeah, no, I feel the same way because I'm I'm in that same boat. I'm doing lots of different things, and it's becoming very
Mm,
comfortable to be online. It's very and staying home and not having to travel. It's actually very nice. I'm enjoying it. I like being with my kids. I like being in my
mm,
studio. I don't go very far away, and I'm still busy. So it's great.
yeah, yeah,
It's a good sort of scenario. I'm so used to traveling that it's been odd for the past year and a half not to travel. And
right.
and traveling internationally has been part of my thing all the time. It's been part of my lifestyle. I don't know what to say. I mean, I feel like is it? I mean, it's kind of a transitional moment for a lot of people.
Mm.
You go out and
Yeah,
tour.
I mean, I would say, I mean, I definitely miss the occasional travel, but
Yeah,
just sort of going in and out for DJ gigs,
yeah,
it's kind of like I'm not sure. I'm not sure that that's the sort of is that it's a great way to travel in a way, but it's also a bit taxing, and I'm not sure. It's like it's not. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I guess we'll see. I mean, it is quite a it is something that you have to, I mean, you have to invest quite a lot of time to keep the perform. I mean, whatever perform. I mean, you can't just demand that people will book you for stuff unless you actively honor that, you know, the performance skill and output and coming up with new
Right.
ideas and stuff. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of, yeah, you can't just say to some promoter somewhere in the world, it's like, hey, it's me, Raj, like book me for a gig. And it's like they'll be like, what, like what do
Why?
you do, like what do you do, like why, who, like,
I
even
know.
if people know you, even if people know you, they might not even come see you unless they actually know that, you know, like, oh, but is it a performance that I'm missing, or am I just, do I rather just have a new song?
Yeah. No, it's totally true. You know what, Rasmus? There's people jumping online now that people are waking up in
Uh-huh.
Europe and other places, and I think they want to ask some questions. So, do you mind taking a few questions? Is that okay?
No, sure,
Yeah.
sure.
I'm say, guys. So we're online with Rasmus Faber here, and I see you guys up there. Um, so I got some questions for you. Do you miss the EDM world? I'm not sure if you're actually in the EDM world, Rasmus, but can you answer that one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would say I because I started doing club music before EDM became a thing. So I did traverse it, at least I would say on the outskirts.
Mhm.
I I don't miss it particularly, at least not, I'm not sure, but I think for me, it really dumbed down dance music. And
Okay,
it's sort of, well,
so I got to ask you a question. So, just sorry to interrupt you, but so how do
yeah,
you?
yeah, no, good.
What's the difference between the house and the EDM? Where do you draw the line between the two of them? How do you draw the line?
Well, well, I mean,
Please make it
it's a bit difficult, but I would say this, like I would say EDM was when house music and dance music,
Mhm.
which was like a thing for the clubs where people were out sort of dancing and it was very dance oriented, it kind of like then became very commercialized, both in terms of like doing enormous venues where perhaps light shows became sort of as important as the music, as well as the music itself becoming much more commercial. So, I mean, maybe it would be something like, um, yeah, it's like a transition from a more kind of like a more kind of underground expression, even though there were still big nightclubs before EDM, to something that had very commercialized restraints and a kind of a maximalizing sort of way of expression. No subtlety, like no. Uh, uh, so in a way, it's like,
Just a big kick.
yeah, yeah, it's like something like that.
Yeah.
It's like the Michael Bay movie of 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 music.
I know what you said. Yeah.
Something like that. It's like everyone has to, I guess everyone who,
Hang on a second.
let's say, you know, like let's say you just had lots of good movies, right? And the most commercial you got was like Quentin Tarantino and Christopher Nolan.
Yeah.
And then like in comes like woof, you get like Transformers and Avengers and the Marvel universe just
Okay.
all in one, like in the space of a couple of years.
Okay.
That will do things to the scene
Okay.
for, I guess, and you can say that's for good and bad. But do
Mhm.
I miss it? No, I don't miss it.
Okay. You don't miss it at all. Okay.
I'm glad that that the love phase with EDM is sort of like has vaned out a fair bit and sort of brought back a lot of the more subtle expressions in music again.
Okay. All right. Hang on a second. I'm gonna try and get back here again where I was with the chat here. Any other questions, people, about for Erasmus? Hang on a second. I think we got some questions coming in in a minute here.
Mm.
Just make sure. No questions just yet. Okay. Oh, yeah, we have a question for you. All right. So, Rasmus, if you were DJing right now, where would you like to DJ? Where would you be your number one place to go DJ right now?
Right now,
If you had to go DJ
I mean,
somewhere,
this is thing that I mean, I think that the thing I was talking about before is probably I'd probably I'd probably pick some like really small town in Japan with amazing food and this like club music local
like you to
aficionado that
DJ?
build like a create that installed like $1 million sound system into like a 50 square meter basement and then just like
Yeah.
pump, this just like
Yeah.
one of those kind of like weird and
Yeah.
crazy and interesting
Yeah.
experiences.
I remember, I lived in Japan for so long that I totally understand that. I would go to the
Mm,
weirdest places, like on the beach in Enoshima, and go to a club and be like, "Oh my God, what is this? It's like the middle of
mm,
nowhere. It's like there's 200 people just going crazy, just,
yeah,
just dancing their heads off and having so much fun all
yeah.
night. And it's just like the tiniest little club, and this DJ that's virtually unknown sometimes, and people are just having the best time of their lives, and people were friendly too, right? They talked to each other, and it was like a
Oh
community thing.
yeah, 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 yeah.
And it's
I
like,
mean, there's a thing too, like about the EDM scene and the club scene and stuff, and it's actually, you see dance floors also changing. Like you have because different music give rise to different emotions. Like you don't have. I mean, obviously, people who go to like a sort of death metal concert are happy that they're able to go there, but the expression like of the actual music is not exactly like happiness per se, right? And it's the
yeah,
same thing with club music, where like outside of EDM, if you go to more like club music oriented places, you have a lot of groove, you have a lot of heat, you have a lot of sort of friendship and love and stuff.
yeah,
And I'm not saying that that's per definition better than being more sort of like a fist pump and a big kick and kind of like just I don't know whatever that expression is for. But as an alternative, I would say it's definitely something that is nice to have.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree. I mean, it's different. It's nice. It's really nice, right? I think the house music community and the electronic music community can be more friendly and welcoming with a lot of things too, right? So,
Mm.
all right. So, any other questions, guys? We got any questions here for Rasmus? Okay, a second.
So you asked me about like future uh plans, right?
Yep.
So one thing that I'm not sure if you've done anything like this or but
Mhm.
I really want to do now that sort of maybe J-pop but maybe especially K-pop at the moment
Right.
is it has such an international with a globalized sort of like audience. One thing that I really want to do is to sort of work with a lot of these Japanese artists like singers and also a few composers, the ones that I really like, and
Okay.
do some kind of project where you're not like specifically targeting Japan, but you're just actually making good music using whatever influences you can, right? But
Right.
like, um, I mean, something like like making an album with Japanese singers without sort of tailoring it to some specific group, but just like actually just making a good album coming from whatever background we are coming from.
Okay.
That's something I sort of have on the agenda that I really want to do. It's kind of a bit of a sort of passion project in the pipeline.
Wow. Okay. So, are you willing to come to California to do it?
What would be the reason to go to California to do it?
Well, it's just an easy flight from Japan, so everybody comes here all the time anywhere. It's like we're kind
Oh,
of
that's true. That's true.
it's a conduit for Japan. I'm telling you, every Japanese artist wants to come here. They all just show up eventually. They all just sort of like
Uh-huh.
show up, in California all the time. So, I mean, could be possible. We could do something. We could make it happen for you if that's what you want.
What's the flight time from Tokyo to San Francisco?
8 hours.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a bit better than I get 11 hours from Stockholm. That's a bit better.
Only 11 hours to Stockholm? To
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, yeah.
You kidding?
And
Really?
that's including a stop actually.
I used to live in Paris, and it wouldn't take me 11 hours to get to Tokyo.
No, because Paris, if you fly, they take the long route. They take like they go.
London, and then London back, right?
No, I mean not even if you go from direct from Paris, it's
Yeah,
still like I don't know, like a 13 hour or
yeah,
something like that.
13 hours. Yeah,
Because they go like across the Middle East or something. But if you go from Stockholm through Helsinki, you go over basically you go over the north of Siberia.
oh,
So
I didn't.
that's like the short routes like over Russia. So that's quicker.
I didn't realize that. Wow. Okay, that's actually interesting. I mean,
Yeah, I don't know, but it's like there's only few airlines that does that. Like Russian and Finnish airlines do that, like that top route. I don't know why. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what the reasons are behind that, but that's definitely
only the Russians and the
yeah,
Finns.
that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I'm part Finnish actually, so that's interesting. I mean, I'll
Oh
talk to.
yeah.
I'll talk. Yeah, I'm part Finnish, so I'll talk to my relatives in the Helsinki, find out what's
All
going
right.
on. That's really
Uh-huh.
interesting. Okay. Huh. Okay. I didn't realize that. I thought that it was like a complete like 16, 18 hour flight to get up to Stockholm, Sweden.
No, thankfully no. That's more like me getting to to San Francisco actually.
Really? How long is it for you to get here?
Yeah. Uh, I, I think off the top of my head, I think it's like 15 hours.
Yeah, something like that. Must be at least, right? For you to get,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's been a while since I was in the West Coast, but I think it's something like that. Yeah.
Well, you're
And
gonna
and the and the and the and the time difference. I'm like going to. I mean, the time difference is brutal for me going to you.
it's terrible,
It's
man.
just
I'm
like,
sorry. It's
yeah,
like
it's like,
2 days of
oh,
sleeping. When you sleep 2 days, to get over it. It's terrible.
yeah.
Oh,
I mean, going to Japan is so much easier. I mean,
yeah,
it's the same sort of like differences, like 8 9 hours, but just the way it's sort of like puts the way it messes with your days. I mean, you can just see how easy it was to sort of we're sitting here. It's like night for you and morning for me, right? It's just
yeah,
like we have the night between us,
yeah.
and it's just yeah, it just messes everything up.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, I coming from Japan here was terrible. Going back was no problem.
Mm.
Very easy to go back, so but yeah, it's terrible. But positive stuff. So let's end things on a positive note. You're
Oh,
doing
for
lots of,
sure, for
you're
sure.
doing lots of great stuff. And
I think time that well, yeah, we've talked about many serious difficulties. I think
yeah,
time differences are like that.
yeah,
Those are negatives I can handle. We've
exactly. Exactly.
we're past like sort of creative anxiety and sort of
Yeah,
yeah life choices.
yeah, yeah,
We're in the we're talking weather now.
yeah. All right. So let's make great plans. So you're gonna come here obviously at some point, coming to join us in California. Let's get a
I'm
plan.
sure. I'm
Let's do
sure.
let's do something together. It'd be awesome.
Yeah, man.
Josh has been telling me for years we have to do something together. So let's find something and work together, scoring or whatever, production. Um, so what do you think in the future? What are the next things you want to do? Any plans other than go to Japan, go other places and work and tour? California, is it on your list? Tell us what you want to do. Give us your
You
bucket list.
really want me to go to California, right?
Come to California, man. It's okay.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's I really I focus on. I want to focus as much as possible on the scoring thing. And if I don't like, if I don't know when it's been I've done like I don't know 4 or 5 seasons of scoring, I guess, different with different animes, and I think I mean if I don't get another gig straight after this, I will try to do something that sort of like somehow either trains me, like makes me better,
Yeah,
or that somehow like on some kind of backhanded way could lead to more of those opportunities. So
yeah,
I'm gonna try to like set my mind on that, I think. But then that said, I also have a lot of sort of house music stuff in the pipeline as well. So, I'll just try to do everything as usual.
Okay, so what would you say to up and coming composers, producers, musicians, like who are trying to do what you're doing and want to get ahead? What's your advice to them?
Yeah, it's just put in the hours.
Yeah, I agree.
Put in the hours. Just, I mean, that's it. That's there's really nothing else. I mean,
There's no shortcut,
I mean, right?
There's no shortcut, right?
Yeah, or at least if there are shortcuts, then the person who are always putting in the hours using the shortcuts will do better than. I mean, there's no way around the hours, because if there are shortcuts, they're there for everyone. So you still have to put in the hours, because everyone has everything now. There's no, well, not everyone has everything now. That's a ignorant statement, but
everyone could get
you know what I
everything
mean.
if they want. If they could get everything if they want it, it's
Yeah,
accessible, right?
right.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the main thing. If you want to, yeah, it's, my my sort of way of doing what I do is, well, I guess every way is unique. Like, you can't really mimic someone's, you can't really model yourself after some particular way of success. You just have to like get really good.
Right. So, in other words, trying to develop your own a particular style, technique, right? Your own.
Doesn't hurt, but it's
Doesn't.
not always necessary either. I mean, it's like people who are sort of like, I mean, there are people who are doing great work without having a specific style, and then they're just like sort of facilitators, and they kind of like
Yeah.
run, they kind of like float very smoothly between different people, and like there are people like that too. I mean, if you're one of those, I mean, that's all the power to you. I mean, just get good at that.
Yeah, I know. I mean, a lot of composers, and they ask me, and they're going to ask you the same question: how do I sell myself as a composer? And I think that's a difficult question, and I want to see what you answer, how you answer that one. How I ask to people all the time, so how do I sell myself? How do I get into the industry? How do I sell myself as a composer? Again, I understand, difficult question, but give us your thoughts on that question.
I mean, I would, I honestly don't know. I mean, I guess it's the same as selling yourself as an artist. If you excel at making music, and if you excel at composing, then people will realize that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to scoring and composing, it's not always about excelling as a composer and a producer, because you have to be able to like work with people, and most composers, they work locally, and they work with like local filmmakers, and like, I mean, it's probably, if you're a composer, it might not be the best way to just try to sell yourself to like Japan or Hollywood or whatever. Like, if you're not prepared to move there, then maybe it's better to just like, but it's just such a cliche answer, but just like local filmmakers and stuff. But you have to learn how to work with people, whatever
Yeah.
you do. So
Great. That's a great answer.
yeah.
That actually is the correct answer. Yay! Yeah, that's a perfect answer. Learn how to work with people, right?
Says the lone introvert from his studio by himself. But anyway, yeah.
I think we're talking about me or you.
Well.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It's like we have to be able to communicate with directors and other people, of course,
Right.
but we are lone wolves in our studios, right? It's become.
Yeah, but this, it's not, and it's not to say that introverts, it's not about like, it's not introverts.
Yeah.
You can be an introvert, but it's still about like, you will still work with people. I mean, you don't have to go drink beer with them necessarily, but like,
but you should.
you still have to.
Beer is good.
In California, right? Yeah.
Yes.
Right, but you have to at least, you have to understand and learn about the process where your composing is going to be featured. Like, just have to learn about filmmaking and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people have to understand. I mean, a lot of people want to be film composers or just composers in general, but they don't understand how visual media works. I think
Right.
that it's important to understand. how visual media works, and there's different forms of visual media, right? Linear,
Mm,
non-linear, like how does it work, and how do directors and how do developers work,
mm.
and there's different forms of it. And I think that's something that a lot of people have to educate themselves, correct? How it all
Right.
works.
I'm gonna actually take back what I said.
Hmm.
I think
Wow, okay, all right.
if you're asking how do I sell myself as a composer, I think now that I think about it, I think the chances are that the reason that you're asking that question is because you're not ready as a composer. Because if you're so good that you can land a score gig, then people around you will have noted, or you cannot have gotten so good without having garnered some attention from your surroundings in terms of mentors, teachers, musicians. I would say that typically the person who asks such a question is a budding composer. The problem for that person is not at that point is not selling themselves as a composer. It is becoming a much better composer.
Interesting. But I think, do I mind if I critique that one?
Sure. It's yeah, I'm not I didn't write that in stone. It's just I'm freewheeling here a bit, but
Yeah, right,
yeah,
good,
go
good.
ahead.
So I think that from my perspective, because I have a lot of friends and budding composers, right? That
Mm,
who are fantastic. They're really good at what they do, and but they don't understand how to prepare themselves for that world. They don't understand how to communicate and to develop their connections. So I feel like they're developing their composing skills, but not their connectivity to the industry. And I feel like you are like a very good example of somebody, myself included, who understands that it's an industry, it's a community. We have to get together, we have to talk,
mm,
we have to make connections, we have to work with people. There, we can be lone wolves now, Rasmus, because we have work.
right.
We're already busy, so the lone wolf thing is okay. We can just shoot an email and something will happen probably
Yeah.
eventually. But for them who can't shoot an email and go like, "Hey, I need something to happen," I mean, no one's listening to what they're doing. That's my question. How do they? Because I know there's a lot of them out there that are asking like, "We've already made the connections. We're already here." They want to know how did we, or how did you in particular, because they
Mm,
love you, how did you get where you are? I mean, and you're in Sweden, you're in Stockholm, you're not in LA, you're doing
right.
things. And then I work with a lot of other people like you. Like, we're not, I intentionally don't live in LA because I don't like LA. I like it
Mm,
here. I don't want to be in LA. It's easy for me. It's a 6 hour drive. Pack my kids in a van and drive down there. I can be there in like 6 hours. But I don't want to be there. I like living here in my countryside studio where I'm very happy. And we're both okay. And that's a very I think a lot of people are probably envious of us
mm.
because we can be
And
here.
I mean, yeah. So I think I'm just thinking like I'm just thinking. I think I know people that doesn't have that don't have the opportunities that I have, but I think, and I know people who are talented, but I would say talented with lots of room for potential growth
Yeah.
and room for growth, or being good in the sense that, oh, this guy is good, uh, but but not, not developed.
Right.
Like that's kind of like you're sort of student level great, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of potential, but
Yeah.
it's not yet been realized.
Yeah.
And I find that I was just starting to reflect on. I find that a lot of people who are look like looking for, like, okay, so I mean, if someone asks me for opportunities and they blow me away, I will give them opportunities personally,
Yeah.
because people who blow me away, who doesn't have work, I have use for those people.
Correct.
and so does many others.
Yeah.
But the people who ask me are either, you know, not good enough, which is like a reality. Not everyone is good enough to be a composer, or they're not just not ready. They're just not, like, they haven't put in the hours. So they feel that they have potential, and they're young, so that they kind of like, they are maybe perhaps not generalizing, but they might be a little bit entitled in terms of like just entitlement of youth, right? Like you're sort of like, it feels like I understand and know everything, so why can't I get everything, right?
Well, that's a misunderstanding of
Am I
what.
being unfair?
No, I think you're being fair. I mean, you're being fair, but I think you have to qualify that and let people know, like, why they're not there. Like, what's holding them back? What's wrong with them? Or not wrong, but maybe what's not quite there. What's missing? You know?
I would say it's experience of making music. If you're talking about composing specifically, okay, but then, like, if you're, I think that if you're good enough, if you're so good that you could legitimately ask that question,
Yeah.
you would not need to ask the question. That's what I think. I'm still like, I'm not
No,
as
good.
again, I'm not writing it in stone,
Yeah.
but I think that typically that feeling is
Interesting.
I think it's most commonly misdirected slightly.
Okay, remind me again. I'm not clear on that one either. So, what again?
I've had that question asked to me many times,
Yeah.
but I've never, to my recollection, then gone, well, show me your stuff, and then becoming blown away, asking myself, yeah, shit, I don't know why this guy isn't getting all the work either. That
Yeah.
hasn't happened.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, or actually not every once in a while, like quite often, I pick up on young talented people to work with, whether they're guitar players or producers or whatever, right?
Mhm.
But they rarely ask me that. Like, they might be young and don't have all the work yet, but because they're good, they're already enough into the opportunities world. Because in order to learn, you sort of like, you learn that along the ride. Like, in order to learn, you have to talk to people, you have to embrace things that will give you certain kind of knowledge. Perhaps that is also knowledge of your limitations. But the typical answer, I would say, is work harder on your craft. Don't worry about the opportunities. The opportunities will come. You're not a great producer, a great composer that no one's heard of. That is very unusual. More likely, you might be a potentially great producer who's not great yet, or composer or musician or whatever.
That's great advice. That's fantastic advice. Luckily, we're recording this, so that's fantastic. That's the best thing all night, I think. So give me 1 second. Let me just take some questions here.
Yeah.
Can we answer a few questions in the chat room, please? Any questions? Okay, I think maybe trying to collaborate with more famous musicians, singers can help you get famous as a composer. Correct?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there are ways. Yeah, sure. But I mean, that's the same. I mean, it's the same. Yeah, it's the same logic applies, right? Like,
Right.
if you're that good, then, like, if you get that good, then you have probably done something like that. Yes, there are things that you can do that gets you more fame, but it's typically not like taking you from zero fame to fame. Like, it's more like, if you're a great composer who already has work and has credentials, yes, you can do certain things that might boost your profile, but it's not like, you need this one shot, or like, that kind of thing. But you can I don't know, like, I was just watching some I mean, a lot of composers. I was watching this not document, but this YouTube video with Ludwig Göransson, who's a
Yeah,
fellow Swede
yeah,
composer, right?
I saw
And he
that. Yeah.
started. I forget the guy's name, but he started as a sort of an intern at a composer's. Like he he did the works. He moved to LA, started composing whatever, some composer school or school of film music or whatever. Like I don't know what it's called exactly. And then
Your
he was
thoughts
just
on
like,
Ludwig's composition?
yeah, I mean, yeah, he's skilled, no doubt. I mean, it's like it's not. I like him. I like him. Sure. I mean, he's like not my favorite, but he's good. He's
Yeah,
good. I like him, and because he's Swedish too, I can really relate to the way he describes things because he has this sort of like slightly understated style that I really know I really know what he's talking about when he's talking. So that's kind of interesting. But he worked his way up. Like he sat assisting in another studio and sort of like made edits late at night for some composer guy who I forget his name. And then he just got little by little got opportunities themselves. So I mean I know that's how a lot of composers start out. Like they start out by assisting for someone else in some,
yeah, that's totally right,
um
and that's the
so
magic.
that's probably, yeah, I mean that's probably a pretty good a good advice if you can. I mean that is basically just tapping into this whole like learn as much as you can thing, because if you're put there on the spot and you have to learn stuff because you're expected to do a job, like even if it's a sort of mechanical job, oh you have to do all the sort of like audio edits for this score piece because the big composer is coming in the morning and expects everything to be ready. That sort of gun to the head type of scenario forces you to learn a lot faster than watching some YouTube video and seeing like, oh, I should probably learn this, and
Yeah,
then like it's kind of like putting yourself on the line
I agree. I agree. Totally
teaches
agree.
you a lot faster.
Yeah, I totally agree. I totally agree. I mean, the Hollywood composers are. I mean, they're great and they're not great, right? There's good and bad to a lot of composers. I mean, it's the same formula over and over again. We both know that, right? The same formula with the same modal inflections. They go on. It's very similar. I mean, I watch Marvel movies and I go like, well, it's the same thing over and
Mm,
over again. The one thing I love about anime and games is like you never know what's going to happen. You just never know,
right.
right? There's a bit more like excitement to me anyway. Well, there's
Right.
not Marvel movies. I go like it's the same. The emotional context of the composition is the same, and it doesn't. I can't tell the difference between the composers honestly. But in
You know
anime,
what? I actually listened to the Avengers Endgame soundtrack because I was kind of like looking for some inspiration, and I was surprised because I saw the movie, and I was surprised how good the score was, and that I didn't notice that at all when watching the film.
yeah,
It was like an Alan Silvestri score, and I
yeah,
was like,
yeah,
"Fuck,
yeah,
this is great stuff." And then it's just like, but it's just buried under the editing and just like
yeah,
crazy pace and stuff. It's like when you listen to the movie, just hear you it sounds like the score is like totally run of the mill boring stuff, and then when I listened to it on Spotify I was like, was this in the movie? Like this is
yeah.
great.
I know. It's totally
I don't
it's
know, like I don't
underscore.
know, yeah.
Literally underscore. Right? They've
Yeah.
literally buried it under the dialogue so
Mm,
deep. And Alan Silvestri is fantastic. He's fantastic. But I mean, Jesus Christ, that they buried it. It's just not there. It's just like
mm,
it's an emotional. I think it's emotional impact. It's not really like in your face, right?
yeah.
Like an anime score
I
is in
think,
your face.
I mean, I think a lot of young producers are composers, I would say.
Mm.
Many are missing some many well, so like starting out, you're not going to go from like studying composition to giving your MIDI files to an orchestrator who will then turn that into symphony orchestra and then have that score recorded for you. You're going to have to produce also. You have to work with sounds, and a lot of scoring is sound design. uh, and so you have to know your way around that and the composing for most, well, I'd say the absolute majority of film like sort of scoring to picture people will have to know both of those things pretty well, and have some kind of own, because it's just difficult to say, like, I'm a composer. Okay, well, what can you do? Oh, I can write sheet music. So you'll have to hire an orchestra, but I'm a great writer, like that's not gonna happen.
No.
So
No.
so people might think that, yeah, but they have a great sense of melody and they understand composition, so why can't I be a composer? But I mean, Ludwig Göransson has all sorts of assistants and stuff, but at the bottom he sits there and like tweaking his own synth sounds.
Yeah.
And the same with like Tom Holkenborg, like those guys as well. I mean, you have these
Tom Holkenborg. Yeah, he's fucking amazing. Junkie XL.
Yeah, I mean, he sits there and like he's doing like the mixing and he's doing the tweaking, and there's a lot to know to say that there's one thing to be like, either a good composer or a potentially good composer, but to also be able to actually deliver a score. Yeah, but if I, okay, you're a good composer, but if I ask you to deliver a score in 2 months, can you, and I give you like, I give you whatever the budget is, and I say, and here's the deadline, can you actually deliver? That's a different question.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a very good question for a lot of young composers. They can do maybe a few cues, but can you finish the soundtrack? Can you
and can you make all the sounds interesting? Can you, maybe you even have to mix it, or if you can, if you can't mix yourself, can you sort out the mixing process? Can you work that? Can you go to a big studio and or at least can you just go to your friend who's greater at mixing than you are? Can you prepare the files for him so that he can do a good job? You have to, that there is a whole thing about that. You have to actually be able to deliver something.
I know.
And people will ask you for that, like even if you go to like some film school and ask a student who's making a documentary, you'd still have to be able to deliver. So that's like an additional skill in itself, that the whole sort of production and there's a lot to it is I guess the gist of it.
Yeah, no, you're oh man, you're so correct. And I think a lot of people out there are probably scared silly now. They're going like, yeah, oh my God, no, what? I thought I could just write music. No, there's just so much technical stuff you need to know. What's a 5.1 mix, and can you do a
yeah
can you, like, I mean all the specs we deal with so many crazy things. Thank you so much, Rasmus. It's been fantastic talking to you, man.
Thank you.
I could talk all night with you, but I know that people are gonna go like, they're going to bed somewhere here. I have to go to bed. It's like 12:05.
Yeah. I have to start working.
Yeah. Sorry to keep you so long. I appreciate your time.
I've enjoyed it. It's good.
Yeah, and I'd love to work with you sometime. We'll figure something out. We'll find a way to work together, and let's keep in touch, all right?
Cool, man.
All right.
Keep in touch.
Have a great day. Enjoy your coffee. Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, man. Take care. Bye.